The ModernJeeper Show, the show about Jeeps, Jeeping, and Jeepers.
Well, hey, Modern Jeepers, is another episode of the Modern Jeeper Show with me, Matt from MetalCloak, and Mr. Modern Jeeper, Corey Osborne.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, where's Jessy?
She actually, I just put her on a plane the other day. She needed to see her grandbaby, and she needed to see her daughters. So timing was okay, and she actually got a little nip by their dog, and so she wanted to go down and see her daughter, and it wasn't bad.
Yeah, same thing happened to Jack. We have this white dog, Zoe, and she's the biggest of them, but she's also protective, and he was doing something dumb to her when he was a baby, and she just went, whoosh, taught him a lesson real quick, and it healed real fast. So it's not a big deal, but it can be freaky. You're like, a little different than having a German Shepherd, grab onto some kid's arm,
right?
Like my family dog did when I was in like fourth grade. A little neighbor, of course, the kid was teasing him, and the dog went, there you go. Like, oh.
Well, it turns out we're pretty durable. But you're right. Like it could have been much worse. And if being a fragile baby, skin's soft, if it could have gotten her eye or something like that, that would have been horrible. But it's kind of funny that she left, and we got 5 inches of snow. It's 5 degrees outside. Wait a minute. How come I'm left here?
What's with that?
Right.
Well, somebody had to hold down the fort. Somebody had his work to do.
Yeah, it was actually this morning was pretty cool. I got our little ATV snowplow out, and I've been waiting for some propane delivery. So I'm nervous that the guy's going to pull up out front and go, "Oh, sorry, your snow, wasn't cleared." So I was out there first thing this morning, shoveling and clearing the driveway and making sure there was no excuses that he can't get up the driveway. So
okay, so let me understand this. You're on the western slope of Colorado. It snows there probably pretty regularly. It can be a tough living out there. This guy lives out there, presumably he's from the area.
Sure. Yep.
From the region, right? And he does deliveries. And he would actually drive up and go, "Yeah, I'm not going to bother because there's snow on your driveway. I'm not going to make this critical delivery of propane."
Right. And it's kind of funny because those guys do chain up when they come up the roads up here, but it's very interesting. And AmeriGas is very specific on their little disclaimers about, they in fact, when I scheduled it, they called to say, okay, well, by the way, your driveway has to be free and clear of snow, and I'm thinking to myself, it's going to be harder for him to get up the road to get to my driveway than it will be for him to get up the driveway. So maybe they should call the county and see if, the snowplows have been out. I don't know. Kind of dumb.
Right. Because, there's something about living where you do that propane is a critical part of your existence, right? I mean, without propane, you guys would be icicles.
Well, like we were chatting, the house doesn't rely on propane for heat. We have a pellet stove and stuff like that, but it is for the water heater and the stove. I'm more concerned about propane for my shop, for the garage, because we have a lot of stuff coming up, and I have a lot of projects going on in the garage. That's why I have the shop, is so that I can keep stuff out of the snow and I can go out there and work. Well, right now I have that heat out there turned way down because I'm getting nervous. I think I'm down to 15% or something on a 250-gallon tank.
Wow.
But I was reassured by the folks in India that I'd be fine. So.
Well, that's the problem when things go national, right? Yeah, AmeriGas and these national organizations doing it because they're all super efficient. I'm sure they're great. I'm sure the local offices are fine, but yeah, that's just that funny thing. You've got this thing you depend upon, and we were looking at properties. We were chatting about this. We were looking at properties, and they all had propane on them, and I didn't mind that. I mean, it was kind of cool, but it was the idea that that's a different level of living, right? When you've got a septic tank and you've got propane and you're kind of off the grid and you've got a well. There were some places we were looking at. That was it. You had a well, you had a septic, and you had propane, and that was it was only 5 minutes from town. But that's just that there was no lines, and you're so used to being in a city that has it all taken care of. Yeah, I go back to my federal city philosophy, which is this idea that we're so used to everything being taken care of us, because right now where we're at, we have all the services we need to survive right here. That when you go out into these other rural areas and big pieces of properties where you actually have to worry about whether or not you have propane, whether or not you have gas, whether or not you have something to keep you warm.
It took me a number of years before I really got comfortable. This was the first time I'd ever lived out in kind of away from a lot of those services. And it took me a few years to kind of get my head around. I mean, we do have really good water source, but that is new to the house. When there's actually a pump house on the property just 100 yards from the house, where it was a cistern. And down in Kelowna, you can actually people still do this up the road from us. They go down there with a pickup truck and they have a big 500-gallon water tank basically on the back of their pickup truck, and you can go down there and fill that tank up. It used to be 25 cents. That was 20 years ago. I think now it might be 50 cents, but that water pulls directly out of the river. You fill up your tank, you take it to your house, and you dump it in your house tank, and then you have a pump and a pressure system. All of that equipment is still underneath this house, but I'm hooked up directly to Tri-County water. So water's a big deal, especially Western Colorado. I mean, to have a well, a lot of wells are great. Sometimes they have issues, sometimes they dry up, but you're right. I mean, septic systems, we have to have that pumped out about every 5 years or so. The propane thing, it's typically not a big deal. Like I said, the one on the house, if I fill it every year and a half or so, that's fine. But the garage one, I fill usually yearly. This year's been really cold. So, and again, I know that there's people back east that are, and north and east that are just really struggling this year. So we got sunny skies. We got 5 inches of fresh powder. I'll take that.
Nice. Well, on Saturday, I took the boys up to what's called Nyack, a little area off of Interstate 80. And Nyack is, it's just a little stop, and there's probably some roads off to different areas. I don't even know what's around there. All I do know is that there's a gas station there that we usually stop at. It's just one of these nice little lines. It's a pretty good mini market. Used to have a Burger King there. I think that closed down some time ago, but you'd stop there. But it has a snow park, and what it is that the owners of the gas station own the land all the way around there too, and they built these extra parking spaces. Probably has close to 150 parking spaces. And when it snows in the winter and it has big snow out there, they open up this snow park. And it's just a parking fee. You pay to park, and then you can go have fun on the property, the backside of the building, up on the top. And kids are out there with sleds. And of course, the mini market sells sleds. Of course, it sells gloves, it sells beanies, all that kind of stuff. And it's just a fun thing to do. So the kids are out there playing. So we hadn't done it before, and the kids really hadn't been out in the snow. Even last year when it was good snow, I just hadn't had a chance to take them up. So I stopped whatever I was doing. I threw them in the truck and we drove up. It was kind of interesting because you're going up 80. I was looking at the GPS. We're going to be there in 6 miles, 5 miles. I'm like, where's the snow? Because there was no snow. It's like, there's a little patch over there, guys. There's a little patch over there. I'm like, I'm getting a little concerned that you're going to get up there and it's not going to be any snow. We get to Nyack and it's just the snow line. It's like right before the snow. It's right after the snow line. It was perfect. There was snow up there, and it hadn't snowed around here for over a week, so it was a little icy. If you're in the shade, it's icy. You're in the sun, it's slushy, right? But the kids had a great ball. They pulled out the sled that a friend had given us, and they were trading off with it, having fun, trying to build snowman. There was a couple there that brought extra snowball makers and said the kids could play with them. So they're making snowball makers. So I'm, of course, marking down my list of all the stuff I need to buy now for the next time we go up.
Right.
And it was a beautiful, beautiful sunny day, and just happened to be that way. Sunday comes around, all of a sudden there's this freak storm that comes through, right? Snow as low as Grass Valley, which is significantly lower on 80 than Nyack. All fresh powder up there. John drives in Monday morning, and he's got 6 to 8 inches still on his car. And usually that just falls off, right? He's got a, he's driving an hour and a half from where he lives down here. But it was so cold that it was just staying up there. And he pulls into the parking lot and he's got, 6 inches on the roof. But that's just the way it's been kind of freaky that way. But we had a hole, so there's all of this fresh powder out there. Now these last 2 days have been beautiful. Like yesterday was sunny, today's sunny and beautiful. It's like whoever's into skiing right now is having a blast because the weather is just perfect ski weather. And the powder is all really dry. So I guess the guys that are snowboarders are enjoying it. So it's been absolutely beautiful last few weeks.
Well, it's definitely, I mean, we talk about this and we've talked about it all year long about how California was so dry and we need all this moisture and stuff. And it's interesting year. I hope that it helps. Obviously it's going to help some. Last week we had Senator Maynard on the podcast, and it's interesting, you go, as soon as you go back east and you get beyond, I don't know, you start getting into that Tennessee area and there's so much water all the time. Everything's so green. And that's why wheeling back there is such a good, it's so different from us in the West where we're used to dry riverbeds and dry, canals. And that's where all the rock crawling is. Right. And well, back there it's muddy and it's soupy and it's gooey and slippery. So maybe it'll change, right? We'll get so much moisture out here that that'll be interesting. Driving up creeks that are see in the West we can't do that. If there's water really running in it, they don't want you in there. Yeah, that's right.
We'll talk about creeks out here. Like the Rubicon. The Rubicon when there's this much snow, because we've been where it was, and I remember seeing was it June, like as late as June. And what year? There's been some years in the past where as late as June, the Springs is still flooded.
Oh yeah,
the Rubicon Springs is flooded. There's just this water all the way up through because the runoff that's going through the river is full. Right, the snow is up there, and it just happens to be that magically it kind of clears out just in time for Jeepers Jamboree. But even then, there's been years where the water was still high. It's still muddy. The Beaver Dam broke one year, and it was everybody was having to go through. So it is a constant game, but that means that the Rubicon Trail in itself won't be open for a very long time, right? It just won't be.
And then that small window becomes it, and it just packs so many people when it does get cleared away. I was going through some images yesterday and came across. I was looking at some stuff from the third week in July, and we were up in the San Juans on Black Bear Pass, and Black Bear Pass had just opened. And it was in July, and I'm looking at the pictures and it's just amazing because I had to go back and look at the dates and go, really? Oh yeah, that was a long time ago. We haven't had winters like that, but it really does affect how we use all of our wheeling places, especially in the mountains, especially in the Rubicon, places like that, where if it's a late opening, it smashes all of the people that want to go there into a very short window. And, right. Typically here, the first week in October, we're getting our first freeze. Nobody wants to be that cold and go drive in the snow. So the passes here could close down very early, which really means you have like 3 months to go wheeling. And that forces a lot of people. And that's where this overuse thing that we've talked about too comes into play, where just so many people on the trail and things get torn up. And yeah.
Well, and especially the trails that have, excuse me, they have rocks like the Rubicon. When there's that much snow in there, you actually have movement happening, right? The snow, right. The ice, expansion, contraction, things moving. You'll go in this year, it'll be different. That's the beauty of these trails though, too. It's going to be different this year than it was last year.
That's right.
The amount of snow in there, certain rocks that you were trying to avoid on the left and now will be on the right. Things will be looser.
I know we've had a bunch of questions about, when are you guys going to run the Rubicon again? And we've thrown some dates out there, and I'm still waiting to hear back from some of our partners that do some maintenance up there and handle a lot of stuff up at the Springs. So I've reached out to them. It's, we're trying to play between two other events. So I'm not going to formally throw out a date yet, just for our listeners. When we know, believe me, you guys will be the first to know. It'll be small. It's going to be a limited deal. Like if there's 8 to 10 of us, that's probably it. That's all we're going to take in there. So, yeah, we'll try to keep everybody. I was looking at my calendar right now just to make sure that I had put it on there. Yeah, it'll be a fun trip, but once we get things finalized, we'll make sure everybody's aware.
Absolutely. Yeah, we definitely, I mean, guys, it hasn't been because we haven't wanted to do the Rubicon. It's just, there's a lot of logistics involved, and there was things that changed over time. And we just had to decide how we're going to do it. So this year, I think we have a better plan. It's going to be earlier in the year than we've done in the past by about a month, maybe.
Yeah.
Just depends on how it comes together, but it does depend on other people, because the Rubicon is, when it comes to Rubicon Springs, when it comes to the properties and stuff up there, I will say this, that if it all works out, most likely one of our camp nights I'll just say might be actually at the MetalCloak campground, which is on the Rubicon Trail Foundation property. That's not confirmed, but that might be a possibility. Might as well stay at the MetalCloak campground, the most scenic campground in all of the valley. Well, of course, I have actually never been there, so yeah. I don't know what it could be.
For those folks that have been out there, they also know that getting supplies in and out of the springs is a process. So that's why we tend to kind of tail on to some other folks that may already be there. And again, we'll see. Making no promises. This year's schedule, Mattson, Jessy, and I have spent the last month really planning these events and who's going to be around to support us there. Who can we get not only from the home office out to say hi to folks and some of these larger events where we need help. But it's going to be a very, very busy schedule. I'm in typical me fashion. I threw these dates together and I look at the calendar and I'm thinking that's easy. And then as I go back and start looking, I'm like, who came up with this idea? Whose plan was this?
His eyes were bigger than his stomach.
Yeah, definitely biting off, what I think is maybe it's the age thing. I don't know.
Well, it's like me. I decided that we're doing three skills days this year, guys. The first skill day is going to be I just had that schedule here. And let me pull it up here. So the first skills day is we're doing 2 Jeep skills days, and then we are announcing a Bronco skills day, a Bronco only skills day. So April 29th is Jeep skills day. May 20th is Bronco skills day. And then October 21st is the Jeep skills day. Now I'll tell you, the cool thing about the Bronco skills day, for those that are interested, I mean, this is Modern Jeeper and stuff, is that Jason Shear, who I'm not going to jinx anything, but he'll probably be a 4-time King of the Hammer now by then, but who knows?
There you go.
He's going to upset at me now that I even mentioned that. But he's going to be out there because, as you know, he's Bronco sponsored. Ford sponsors him, and he knows the Bronco, and he's been involved heavily with the Bronco ever since it was first announced. And so he's going to be out there as part of our MC help support, because I don't know anything about wheeling the Bronco. And most of us don't, even some of our spotters. Like, it's a different world. So we're going to be out there learning. We'll be learning along with you, but we do a Bronco skills day. So, but down to your point, like, it's a lot to put together a skills day, guys. It's a lot. Because the whole team comes out. We bring out everything. There's a lot of coordination going on to make that event happen. And I decided, I'm going to do it on the 29th. And then a month later, I'm going to do another one, because why not?
Why not?
Right. Like, why not? We'll just do another one. All of a sudden I'll be, and that's the same with then we do one in the fall. But we are one thing differently. We are not doing the CTI. Partly we're not doing the CTI because it just takes up a lot of time and effort, and it really isn't about education. It's just it was always more fun for us. And I don't bring the CTI out for anything related to Broncos because it's just embarrassing.
Yeah,
it's just embarrassing.
IFS just doesn't work very well on the trailers. And folks, I mean, we've had a couple of Broncos on the trailer that have been heavily modified now, and I mean, it's interesting. You can heavily modify IFS and you're still not going to get that real articulation that we see on a solid axle vehicle. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. It doesn't. I'm going to say this, but there's a caveat, like, because it really doesn't say a lot about how the vehicle handles off road. The Broncos do well; they just do it differently. So,
Right.
A lot of times we've had this discussion for 10 years now about, well, the number on the trailer doesn't really matter how it handles off road. Yeah, well, be careful. That does and it doesn't. More flex can help you for sure, keeping your rig level through a lot of different obstacles. But the Bronco, it will pick up a tire. It will pick up the back end as it falls into holes and things like that, just because it does not have that articulation. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just different, and you have to be aware of it. Otherwise, you end up on your top.
Well, it reminds me of when you did that that Jeep event. That was at the launch. Was it the Compass or something they launched out, or the Patriot, or one of those?
Yep.
Yeah, you launched out.
Yep.
And they all wheeled fine, but they had that same thing. It was because the IFS, they went, one, and all of a sudden he goes over and it falls over into another hole, and it goes. And if you're okay with that, it wheels fine. It's not what we consider when we Jeep, and it's not what we build Jeeps for. And the solid axle is a different dynamic. But hey, 4-wheel drive works, and you guys got through the obstacles, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's just a different deal. And I don't know. I mean, we had a pretty heavily modified Bronco on the trailer at Winter 4x4 Jamboree, and I think he was 540 or 560 as far as the scoring goes on the CTI trailer, and which is not really a whole lot different than what it does stock. But again, that is just the nature of IFS. You can't get those arms to fall out that far. You just start to bind up a whole bunch of other stuff. So,
and there's a reason why there's skid plates right in the front, right? I mean, part of the other challenge of IFS is that so let's get back to our basic fundamentals, right? If we were thinking about the fundamentals of lifting a rig, the fundamental idea for a Jeep, and this is different because you can go to like Thurn's website when he's talking about, and by the way, if you have a Ram and you have any interest in just the tech, go to Thurn's website. I'm very envious of how much tech he has on there. So Thurn Fabrication. And if you have $8,000 and you'd like to buy a really cool mountain bike, he has a mountain bike company too. So Thurn Fabrication, you check out, but he says specifically, like, he breaks the myth about the reason for a lift, right? In the purposes of a Jeep and solid axle, the reason for a lift is so you can put bigger tires. The reason for bigger tires is to get the diff up off the ground. That's it, right? That's essentially the basics. In IFS, you don't achieve that, right? So if you're putting bigger tires on your rig, you're not necessarily lifting the front off, because when you go articulate, sure, you've raised the clearance from a flat clearance, but when you articulate and when one wheel goes up, the clearance spot doesn't change, right? No. You don't achieve anything. You're not moving a diff out of the way, right? And for those that aren't watching this, right, I've got my hands at an angle on a full. Just take a pencil. You take a pencil, guys. You articulate the pencil. Well, you're obviously achieving something because you're getting the diff up and out of the way, depending on where the diff is, et cetera. But on IFS, that doesn't happen. The center stays in the place, and you get a side movement. You get this. The motion is the side movement going down here and down on that side, which is why when you watch IFS race cars, when you watch Shannon Campbell wheel, and when you're watching him going, they're not articulating and crawling through the rocks up at Johnson Valley. They're simply flying through the rocks. They're going fast. They're bouncing through. I don't even know what it is these days. When I was racing, we kept our tires about 16 PSI. I think they're up like 24 to 25, maybe even higher than that now, because they're not trying to crawl rocks. They're just bouncing through the rocks.
Yeah, they don't want to low PSIs. They're going to hit a rock so hard that it's going to basically hit the wheel and break the wheel. So yeah, they want to keep some more air pressure in their tires. But they don't have that issue like you just explained. There's no center piece that's hanging low. That is a flat bottom. So they have great ground clearance in the front, but they literally they want to keep their speed up, their momentum, and they want to stay off the rocks. They want to hit them and bounce and go. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of KOH,
it's like this next week. It starts. Yeah. It starts Saturday.
If you guys go over to ModernJeeper.com, you can check out Corey posted an article there all about King of the Hammer schedule. But this was the craziness of it. I mean, literally, I know Matt Saygraves, who is Amy Saygraves, Matt Saygraves are really close friends of the show and friends of MetalCloak. Matt was already up there a couple weeks ago. He's part of the crew that goes up and helps to set up King of the Hammers and Hammertown and all that. And by the way, I love the photo you used on the article. So everybody go out, check out modernjeeper.com because you get an idea. That's Chocolate Thunder, right?
Yep.
So that's Chocolate Thunder. This is how many cars, and this is just one snapshot of the people and the number of cars parked out there for watching Chocolate Thunder.
I think I took that photo. I think that was from 2019, and the event think about this. The event has almost doubled.
Yes.
In size.
Yes, it's just insane. And this year, I mean, they started selling tickets like at the beginning of the year. They were selling tickets and ticket packages. And now it's really cool because if there's almost like an affiliate program for racers, they get a kickback on tickets that they sell. So anyway, it starts out, I mean, literally like the King of the Motos is an entire week earlier, right? It's not even trying to be at the same weekend. They gave them their own time to be able to do it and focus on their own things. They have their own little event happening. King of the Motos, the actual race. Let's see.
Yeah, because I think that already even took place. I think that was maybe this past weekend or something like that.
No, it's the 28th and 29th. So yeah, you're right. It did. Yeah, it did took place. I'm all messed up on my schedule. Yeah. So King of the Motos just happened. Now they're rechanging everything up and it's getting ready for the Toyo Classic, right? I think it's pretty cool because one of our guys here, Danny, he's actually good friends with the guys over Baja Jerky. And he helps them out on the Baja 500. Well, the Baja Jerky Class 11 Showdown. I mean, if I could sponsor anything, I'd sponsor Class 11. And if you're not familiar with Class 11, man, these are the VW bugs. Like when I was younger, it probably wasn't a great thing. Apparently, when you're older, it's not a good thing to race at a Class 11 because it just will beat the hell out of you.
Much fun. Yeah.
But God, you got to imagine just basically running around. And these aren't even really like full on Baja bugs. These look more like stock bugs than they do Baja bugs.
For sure.
So you got all that. I mean, to me, it's really cool that they brought in other classes like the Class 11 and the 14 or 1450s. I mean, all the different classes are in there, but that's all happening February 4th, this coming weekend. And then from there, then it's the full week, right? And so, I mean, we're in the midst of it. It's pretty amazing what this has become since its first inception. The first time I went out there was 2010. What was your first year?
Looking back at pictures, I think that because I had an iPhone 4 where I had images. I actually I had a film camera. I think the first time I ever went out there, it was an old film camera.
What's that?
I think it was.
Was it what's film?
Oh, there was like this little roll, and you put it in the back of a camera. It was crazy. It had to have been 10 or 11. Might have been 11.
Wow.
2011.
Wow.
And it's funny for me because literally, like, since we kind of didn't go out there last year, and I don't think we've gone for 2 years. And it's weird after having been out there for a number of years in a row. Like, I start to make excuse like, well, you know what? I don't miss the weather, and it's going to be so cold, and it's always so windy. But you know what? It's the people, and it's that activity, that action, being around that environment, the smell of race fuel all the time for 7 days. It's pretty. If you've never been, it should be on every off-roader's bucket list. It's an experience that you won't forget for sure.
And if it wasn't for the fact that I have so much to do, I'd actually go out there for the fun of it because it's actually fun to go out and be. And 2010 was our first year. We didn't have a booth. We came out. Aaron and I came out, and we were staying in we literally slept. I think it was was that first year that we were in the just back of a truck, like had a camper shell on the back of a truck. But our friends from Rubicon Express were out there, so we talked with them. We hung out. We just tried to get an idea, lay of the land. I think that year was one of the years that Dave at Poly was like sleeping inside of his trailer in his booth, right? He had his little trailer in the booth, and he's like got a little propane heater in there, right? Everybody it was so basic back then.
I think my dad and I slept in the front of my old Dodge. In the wind, like in sleeping bags in the front seat of the Dodge in a windstorm,
Wow. Yeah. So it was a shit show. I mean, it was the year we were out there. I think we're at Sledgehammer. I get the two mixed up, and I think it was Sledge, but it was where rocks were falling on top of on top of the attendees, and in those days the rules were that the attendees could help roll over your rig. You couldn't help each other, but if participants get out there and the attendees could go, we can go watch it and roll. It was a shit show, and it very quickly matured. And now, what it is today, if you were to walk out there and go, wow, how did this start? You wouldn't believe where it started from. Wouldn't believe what it was like. But look, we've got so much going on in that schedule too. At Chocolate Thunder was the picture that Corey mentioned. All the qualifying this year is Chocolate Thunder. In the past years, they've actually had a course that was out there near the short course, and it was starting in the short course. It goes out and it does this cool radical course, and it comes back through the Bronco arch or whatever it was last year, and come back in, and they make this qualifying time. Well, this year it's at Chocolate Thunder. The only thing I could think of is how, excuse my language, fucking messed up Chocolate Thunder is going to be when it comes to race day. I mean, with all these guys powering through there, going to try to time their way up through Chocolate Thunder, and many of them, I mean, I don't care I don't care how smart of a driver you are and how strategic of a driver you are, you're still going to power through this stuff, right? You're going to go through it. It's going to be so messed up. It's going to be crazy.
The course is going to change. It's going to change from day to day. And, now, I mean, the last time we went, now David Hammer King Productions has brought out giant jumbotrons. There's one out at Chocolate Thunder. There's one out at Backdoor. There's one in Hammertown. Now this whole live feed thing, I mean, think about how that has progressed. Where the last 2 years we watched it sitting in our living room. The live feed is so good. It's come so far.
Well, and our buddy Lance, when he owned Pirate, like they were the first ones to come out. They brought out a van. They tried to do the whole live feed. I mean, they were the first ones to really try to do that. And how far it's come. There's full production crews. And if you've ever been in the production trailer, I mean, there's a production trailer. They've got the screens up. And in fact, our guest Shannon Welch, who will be with us in a couple weeks, she was there operating it. She's watching it, right? She's making the calls. When I was on stage for that 1 or 2 years that I did that on stage and kind of helped out up there, she's talking in your ear like, hey, say this, I'm going to say this, right? It's just cool. It's so cool to have been part of that. But as I was saying, I'd be out there right now. The problem is now as a vendor, you have to give about 2 weeks at least of your time to be out there. And we just can't do that. Right. There isn't an event that's worth 2 weeks of our time because, quite frankly, we're not in the racing business. So we're not trying to sell racing goods. And many of our attendees out there, it's awesome. And there's some great people out there and a lot of great Jeepers out there, but that's not necessarily the guys that we are.
That's right.
We're out there too. And we do have, by the way, go ahead.
Oh yeah. We'd go out there. We had the CTI trailer out there a couple of times. And, a couple of years ago, we brought it back out there after I said, we wouldn't do that again. But there was a TV production that they wanted us out there. And I think I'm going to put some of that footage together. I'm trying to get all of this content that we've created over all these years. I'm trying to do better and put some of this together that actually makes some sense. But I've got some of that footage from, some stuff that never even made it to the air. But we took the CTI trailer out there thinking that it was fun to have it as a display, of course, and it does attract a lot of attention. But then we couldn't really run it. And if we were running it, it was, a bunch of race rigs that really wasn't meant for how the CTI trailer is set up in the first place. So, yeah. And then we were going out as media just to capture content and literally for me to go out there and spend 6 days out on a hillside, trying to take good images and stuff, which I enjoy doing. I love taking pictures and I love being around those folks. It's also an extreme amount of work for a handful of good pictures. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
sometimes you got to weigh that and kind of go, yeah, it's also very expensive to go out there for a week. I don't care how you're staying. If you want to eat out there and drink out there and all that kind of stuff, it's expensive to go get a soda and a burger. I mean, you're looking
Oh
at
yeah.
$15.
Well, and you got to do that. Plus, they have like a whole what did I see something in there opening up? Like there's a whole brewery tent now with multiple breweries out
Oh,
there. I
wow.
mean, like a cantina, and and it's the best way to do it is you go out there and you bring out your RV and and your toys and you're fully loaded. You got all the food you need. But you shopped it all at Walmart on the way out there.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so you're good to go for the period and you don't spend extra money on other stuff, but you will. And then there's other
Oh yeah.
things out there. So, and you have to stay in because I'm sorry, you guys have done the thing that I won't ever do, which is to stay in a hotel in Lucerne or whatever.
Yeah,
And,
25 miles away. I mean,
right.
and
And
drive
then,
in and out every day on Boone Road, which is
an hour and
typically
a
a
half drive
mess.
just to get through. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's insane.
It's nice to have, I guess I'm kind of bougie as I've gotten older. I want a hot shower and not to breathe in some of that dust
Oh
for
yeah. You don't
24
want
hours a day.
hammer
Um,
lung for the next
Hammer lung
2
is
weeks.
real.
Yeah.
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 So, but it's also, it's a commitment and it's a lot of work. Not that any of us are afraid of work. It's just, it's an experience. And for the folks that have never been, sometimes the live feed gives you a little look at what it's like. If you really pay attention to where everybody is camped out and where they're staying and what they're staying in, and this brown cloud that ends up showing up of all the dirt in the air over the entire town. Yeah, that's a little taste of what it's like. Of course,
Right.
you can't really taste it, but if you were there, you would be able to.
So we have really just one team that we're sponsoring this year, and there's some others that have probably give some support too, but we just haven't been playing the racing game for a while. And the one we're sponsoring though is Megan Miller, and she drives the old VP Racing rig, which
Yeah,
was Ben Veroza and Jacob
Verosa's.
Pacheco's rig that went to Dawson for a little while. And then I think from Dawson, it was owned by somebody else, I don't know if they bought it directly from Dawson. I don't quite remember the history of it, but they own it. They completely redid it. She actually did pretty good at NorCal Rock Racing this last year, and then this is her first KOH, so it's her first EMC. It's a 4600 class Jeep, really cool little Jeep, completely from the ground up. Derek, her husband, did a complete restoration on it. Has a whole new paint job. It looks beautiful, right? So we're fully supporting them and sponsoring them. And of course, it has MetalCloak fenders and a combination of other stuff, but it does have MetalCloak fenders, and it's just a great group. And I will say, they came by to get some of the sponsorship stuff, and they brought this box of cookies from a place called Crumble. I guess Crumble is a national brand. I was not familiar with it at all. I'm out of the loop on things like national brand cookie stuff, but these cookies were like huge. Like they were like 4 or 5 inches across. There was a dozen of them. They had like snickerdoodle with lemon frosting on it, snickerdoodle with with maple frosting. They had, I mean, it was amazing, right? And of course, we cut them into small pieces because everybody was standing there like we were standing around it like idiots. Which one do I want? Which one do I want? Which one do I want? I don't know. That looks good. So I cut them into little quarters, and everybody could oh, I can try this, and I can try this, and I can try this, and I can try this. But man, that was and talk about taking care of your sponsor. I mean, they show up with a box of cookies. I didn't ask for it. Didn't you?
Can't go wrong.
Can't go wrong. I mean,
yeah,
they're
you
just
bring us food. We're good.
They're awesome people. So look for Megan Miller, Megan. I don't know what their car number is, but 4600 class, we'll be rooting them on. And it'll be her first time even doing anything of that big, that magnitude for that much racing. Now her husband, Derek, races usually, but this year it's all about her. So he's not racing his rig. And I think he runs a Toyota, a 4Runner or something like that. So he's going to be focused 100% on supporting her and her team. And that's pretty awesome. So our heart goes out.
I really enjoy the fact that so many, it becomes a bucket list for a lot of people. They want to go race it. So they spent the last, however many months putting a car together. And it's kind of interesting to me because it is definitely not one of those races that anybody should ever take lightly. I've been around a lot of first year race teams that they go once, they never go back. And I know a guy actually here from Montrose that he spent a year building a rig, went out there and broke in the first like 3 miles of the event and was done. And that's all about racing. I mean,
we did that 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Right.
It's hard, and it can be very frustrating and very, it's all part of the experience. And I wish them all the best. I think that there's a lot of new folks making the trip out this year, and I wish them the best, but you gotta have a very open mind.
Well, I don't know how many last chance qualifier spots there are. I haven't really been paying attention to that, but there were guys that would come out from all parts of the country with a car half built.
Yeah.
Just for the opportunity possibly to do last chance qualifier and possibly race, and working on it. Now, we both years, although second year, not so much. Second year, we were pretty much squared away. Like the car, I did it right the second year. The first year, we literally arrived on lake bed. We still didn't have an exhaust in place. We still didn't have all stuff. We were doing all this stuff in the lake bed, trying to get it done. And before tech, make sure we got our tech inspection and all that stuff. But literally, laying on the floor and fixing things, and which was part of the problem because we had parts that one of my volunteers that was with us shouldn't have been with us, and just like didn't tighten up lug nuts on the rear wheels, and didn't tighten up lug nuts on this belly pan, or didn't tighten
overrated.
Up nuts. Yeah, I know. You only need 3 tires, really.
Right.
And so we had those problems, but the second year, we really put it all together. But the fact that guys would show up from as far away, East Coast from Tennessee, show up didn't have a spot, but we're just hoping that maybe possibly they could get a spot, was pretty incredible. Right. And some years, Dave was like, just open it up. We're going to add another 20 spots, right? We're just going to, why not? We're going to have 140 rigs out there. Why not? Let's just open it up. And just because he wanted to help the enthusiasts to enjoy it and have fun. But it's quite a spectacle. Anyway, King of the Hammers, guys, it's coming up here. It started now. Pay attention. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening. We're involved in a couple of projects out there, one of which will be really known. I'm not even sure how much I can talk about it. I'll talk about it next week because it'll be known by next week. But a couple of projects that are pretty cool. And that's going to be, I think, it kind of on the 4th gets announced, which is why I was going to go down there, but decided not to. But now it's all about after the King. So the next event in my lineup is Tierra del Sol. Right. The next event in your lineup is Death Valley, right?
Yeah. We we have got a lot of stuff to get done. We were talking about us planning what this schedule looks like, and it's so weird to well, heavens, I've got 3 weeks before we got to go. And there's an entire large new MetalCloak truck that is going to get wrapped, and we've got to still design some of what we want on Jessy's on Funshine, and get it wrapped. It turns out that we installed some of the aftermarket parts from our friends out at American Adventure Lab. We saw him at Winter 4x4 Jamboree. We actually installed some of the internals backwards or upside down. So there's a tray and stuff in the back, and I guess the brackets can get flipped 2 different ways. So anyways, I got to take all that out and re-put all that back in there. It turns out we're gonna have to sleep on something. So I'm gonna take the Go Mammoth tent off the Gladiator and put it over on to Jessy's rig. And it's things like, we're gonna carry fuel, and we've never, this is a brand new JL that we've never overlanded in. So it was easy with the Gladiator. It was done, we could just go. And I'm like, no, we're gonna take Funshine. It's bright, it's new, it'll be fun, but it's a whole new packing world for sure.
Well, and that's what I think I mentioned in the last podcast too, is you guys have to learn how to use this rig
all over again.
Understand, Modern Jeepers. I've been with Corey and Jessy, and we both had gladiators. We both had stuff going on. We both had tents on there. We both had these things, right? And all I had to deal with was my son and that they had all their stuff. They were like out set up within like 15 minutes. They were packed back together within 15 minutes. I mean, they had a routine in place because they've done it so many times. But when you're going out with a new rig, like you're gonna have to relearn that routine. You guys could be tripping over each other.
Oh, and where's stuff at? And
yeah, where did you put that box? That was in the box number 3. Where's box number 3? Where's up?
And one of the things about this so nice about the Gladiator and why it works so well as an overlanding rig is because we know you can just throw something in the back. If you don't have room for it, you just throw it in the back and it's fine. You can tie it down, strap it down, cover it, whatever you need to do. But we all know that with a 4-door JK or JL, there's got to be a space for everything, and you can't just kind of throw it up outside. Like it's got to go with you. So it'll be a learning experience. And but again, there's been some. I wanted to talk about the recall notice that's been it's all over social media. A lot of the forums are talking about it, and it was the 2020 Gladiator. And then the 2020 to 2021 JLs. And it talked about this vibration and a bad steering dampener. Now, what's really interesting to me is how many people have taken this to, oh yeah, death wobble. That isn't the case. This is a small vibration that FCA is going, hey, we will pay to have your steering dampener replaced. And it is amazing to me how many different opinions there are and how many, death wobble has been around for as long as I've been around Jeeps. For 20 years, we've talked about death wobble. Right. And it is full blown steering wheel out of your hands. If you ever see a Jeep and the tires are doing this, that is death wobble. Yeah, that is not a small vibration.
Google death wobble. Right. And death wobble video, and you're going to see what death wobble is. And it is got to be crazy to see because I've had it happen. I've had 2 Jeeps that it's happened on, and it would happen on the freeway. Like you're driving down the freeway 50 and all of a sudden it starts happening. It has got to be crazy for you to be driving next to a vehicle that all of a sudden starts having death wobble. Right?
Oh, it's
not to mention how
hilarious
freaky
to watch.
It is to be able to do it. I mean,
it looks like the Jeep's just going to come apart, but it's so funny. And there are some very, knowledgeable folks that are on social media that have thrown out there that, oh yeah, we get death wobble in here all the time. We put on a different steering stabilizer and it fixes it. That is just, I'm sorry, that's not the case. There's something else going on there. Right. You should be able to drive that Jeep without a steering stabilizer on it at all. Right. That is simply a dampener. That's all it is. And FCA is now saying, well, we've realized that there's maybe an issue, and they're now replacing. If people have paid for a new steering dampener or have had to have their Jeep serviced because of this quote unquote vibration, that FCA is going to reimburse you for those expenses. But this whole class action lawsuit about, them curing death wobble and there was a death wobble problem, that is not, again, I got my little fire suit on here. Hit me up. Tell me what you think is the problem, because I've dealt with it for a lot of years with a lot of really smart professional mechanics, engineers. We've talked about this in older shows. Again, the steering stabilizer thing is just killing me lately. And
so I'll use my example of I had a 95 Grand Cherokee. Right. I had a 95 and a 96. My 96 had the V8 in it. It was nice, cool. My 95. And it was, I loved the rig. It was fun. Right. But it had death wobble, like literally from the beginning. It had an old Skyjacker lift on it. Right. This is before I ever had anything for it. It was a Skyjacker lift on it. I did everything I could with it. My only solution, and it wasn't because I didn't want to tear the whole thing apart back then. I didn't want to put a whole new suspension in. I didn't want to do anything. I think I paid like $700 for it. It wasn't worth trying to try to build this thing up. And I wasn't trying to, it was just a vehicle to get me around. Right. And my only solution was every 6 months, I put a new steering dampener in there. It was a cheap one too. I just bought, I think it was a Daystar, the Daystar little steering dampener, whatever the hell they call that one with that picture of the scorpion or whatever. I'd replace that. Maybe it was great. Maybe it was every 3 months. I think it was like every 3 months, not every 6 months. Every 3 months, I replace. That's all it would last. It dampened and solved the problem. It didn't fix anything. Let's understand. Right. It allowed the vehicle to operate. So all the dampener was doing was taking the 1,000 things. And I heard this described once, and I found it actually, somebody wrote years and years ago, 2009, I found this on one of the, and I think I should look for it. It was like on Jeep Forum or something, was a very, very long description of what death wobble was. And the engineer, because he was an engineer who wrote this up and put it on the forum, essentially said that there are 1,000 reasons why you can create death wobble. For all intent and purposes, a vehicle is constantly fighting that. If there's, and it comes down to vibrations, it comes down to harmonics, it comes down to the tires you're using. You could have a tire that is off balance causing it. You can have tires that are too big for the setup causing it. Now, what do we see a lot of? And I'll tell you from very strong perspective, and one of the reasons why we're doing something about this, every single day we get calls. Every day I can tell you, my guys talk to somebody who has a death wobble issue, and they wonder what it is. And it's always after I did the suspension, right, or whatever is causing death wobble. Well, most likely, and this happened both, at 12,000 miles, Will had to replace his. At 20,000 miles, John had to replace his. What am I talking about? Ball joints. The ball joints on the JLs, for some reason, suck, guys. It used to be on the JK. It was a joke because, hey, at about 50,000 miles, have you replaced your ball joints yet? No. Well, you should replace those because you're going to start having problems. The ball joints on the JLs, and it's hard for people to understand that because it's a brand new rig. Why am I having to do it? Well, what happens is the system as it's built kind of works. But when you go and put an aftermarket steering system on, you start forcing different types of issues because the aftermarket steering system is better and stronger and stiffer than the stock one. So what happens? All of a sudden, the next thing that can possibly be weak is what is being found. Nature abhors weakness. Nature will find the weak spots, the weak link. And in this case, the ball joints all of a sudden become the weak link, right? And it goes on and on and on. I mean, there is problems with the aluminum knuckles. I'm sorry. There is a problem with the aluminum knuckles. If you don't want to have any sort of issues whatsoever, go get yourself a set of reed knuckles, right? And you will eliminate a number of problems with steering. There's a problem with the steering box. There's a problem. There's all these other little issues. When it's stock, it works pretty good. When you start changing out products and improving parts, you start putting stresses on other parts that will go bad. Now, I say that we are doing something about it because this week, I'm not sure if it's tomorrow or whatever, but by the time this podcast goes live on Thursday, the MetalCloak ball joints should be live on our website. We decided to tackle that. We've been working on these for 2 years. They're unlike any other ball joint on the market. As everything else MetalCloak does, we believe they're better. They're stronger. They have, everything from more seals to a whole bunch of other tech involved in it, which will all be explained on the site. We're doing a soft launch this week. Then there's going to be a full-on, lot more details on it coming out in social media and stuff in the coming weeks. But these are really, really nice ball joints, guys. Fully rebuildable in the housing. I mean, it is a really nice setup. So we've worked on these for a while, but it's because we get calls every single day.
Right.
And I can't tell you how many Dynatrack ball joints I've sold or how many Synergy ball joints I've sold because we just tell people to go get other ball joints, right? I'll take Dynatrack and rare parts over Synergy every day. I love you, Dave, but I've had guys say, yeah, we put those into customers' rigs knowing that in every 40,000 miles we're gonna have to change them.
Right.
Fine. So we got the new ball, but to your point, it's not just the steering dampener, right? No. That's just the dampener that dampens an issue. It dampens an issue. It has nothing to do with the actual cause of death wobble.
Well, and I get it. Like there's a lot of our listeners may not be as technical or mechanically they're not interested in how it works or why. They just want it fixed. And if you think about what a ball joint is actually doing, the whole front end, the whole steering itself, the knuckle, all of that, like there's literally play in each of these parts. And so to your point, like all these parts can add up to death wobble. or it can be one part and all the other stuff is tight. But it's usually happens when we make a change. This whole, I don't know, it gets very frustrating for me, and that's why I'm not into playing that Facebook social media bashing of, you don't know what you're talking about and I know everything. That's just not who we are. And
right.
There's a lot of opinions out there. Everybody's got one. But just do yourself a favor and kind of look into, be a little bit more aware of what parts you have and what's going on in your front end before you just go, yeah, I put this lift on and now I have death wobble. It's the lift's fault, because there's something else going on there. Having Spike, my old TJ, as it was going through, I don't know how many different build processes. I had a set of, they were Champion beadlocks back in the day, aluminum wheels, and a set of IROC tires. I think they were 35s, 30. They were 36 IROCs, bias ply. Man. They were like balloons on my TJ. And I had horrible death wobble. In fact, we were in Moab and I could barely get back from a trail. But literally, I spent 5 minutes in the campground and would literally play with the toe. And that Jeep wanted to be at 0. It didn't want a quarter in or an eighth in or an eighth out. It wanted 0. And it took, I'd move it, go drive it. If the death wobble was still there, I'd bring it back to the parking lot, move it a little bit more. At 0, I wouldn't get death wobble. I hit a bump and it was fine. And it was all about the toe at that time. But again, every rig is different. Something else is going on that exacerbates this whole thing. I guarantee it's not steering dampener. Steering dampener is just I know, and there are a lot of people out there going, no. I switched my steering dampener out and now I don't have it. Well, right. It's just masking a different problem. That's all. And if the steering dampener works for you, good.
I will say this. My JT has issues in the front steering. Always has, right? And we've discovered different things. And like, I need to replace the knuckles. I'm actually got a call into Reed. I'm probably going to replace those. Should have done it. We were doing some testing earlier, but I wanted to get some images of our ball joints in the aluminum knuckles before I changed it out. So I'm going to end up putting Reed knuckles in. Maybe I'll put a set of RCVs in the front too. I mean, it's just might as well. You're doing it all at the same time. But it's always had issues. And it doesn't, and I'll say this, it doesn't like our steering stabilizer, right? Because we have a steering stabilizer with a JLJT. I have to have a Fox on there. The Fox is a little bit stiffer. It is a different dynamic, right? And that's the way everybody's rig is. A lot of people like ours. It works, steering damper works fine with their rig. And my JT, it just doesn't. So I'm not running that one. I'm running the Fox that we sell. And it's just, for whatever reason, it's very sensitive front. And I've got Black Rhino wheels that are very, very heavy, right? I mean, those Black Rhino wheels I'm running. I love them, but they're very heavy. I've got the set of 38s MTRs or MTs on there.
MTs.
They're good. The O2s actually, which, by the way, love the O2s. Hats off to Milestar. They did a great job with that new compound. Yes. This rig has had lots of miles out there, Arizona and back, Death Valley and back. I mean, it's had a lot of miles on it, and they're wearing great. But for whatever reason, those combination of things has produced death wobble on it. And what do? We just kind of work at it, check it, make sure things are good. Found out ball joints were loose at one point. Found out this, tighten it all up now. It runs great. I love it. So anyway, it is all different for everybody. But if you do have, let's come down to a basic tech suggestion. If you do have death wobble, yes, you can replace the steering dampener, and that will probably help you, like get you to back and forth to work again, right? It's not going to be the solution. So don't think that was the solution.
Right.
Try to fix other things. In fact, you might be better off, if you have the time, not changing your steering dampener. Keep the one that's on there, because one thing that may have happened is it may have just that steering dampener may have just gotten worn out because it's been fighting the death wobble for months and you just didn't know it. And now it's had enough because it's worn out. Start replacing other little things. Look at your track bar, look at your tie rod, look at your drag link, look at your knuckles, look at your ball joints, look at all that stuff. Just make sure it's tight and good. And ball joints, it's hard to tell, because unless you take those knuckles off completely, you can't really see whether or not if they're broken up or if they're not working properly, right? And I guess there is a way of technique, and you can kind of lean on the wheel And
if you lift up the front end and you can take a crowbar and stick it through a hole in your wheel and kind of lift and have somebody watch you, because you kind of need to look at you can see a little bit of movement, but if you look at the backside, if you can move that wheel in if this is your tire, if it moves this way on there, your ball joints are loose. Sometimes they're super, super tight and they won't move, but you may still have some looseness in your ball joint. So,
right.
But it's a good little test. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but just check it out, but just break it down. And, I learned this as a kid mechanic years ago, is you fix the cheapest thing first.
Right.
If it works. And you replace the next cheapest thing first. It works.
Right.
There's the next cheapest thing through. Listen, guys, there's a reason why ball joints are very popular right now for the JT. And there's also a reason why a lot of people have doing the ball joint elimination kits, right? Which is a cheaper way of going. But to me, it's still not as good as actually having ball joints, which is why we came out with ball joints. And they should be coming out this week.
Cool.
Wow. So I think that's the most technical thing we've talked about in a while.
Yeah, for sure. That was kind of a little rabbit hole there, but we got some spots. I just went through some of the Death Valley stuff. Just got our sign off on the Death Valley permit. So we are ready to roll. We've had quite a few people signing up for the first trip. We still have some space on the second trip. So Death Valley, if you want to go, you better get on it.
Yes. It is, and it's amazing how quickly that one's been filling up, and lots of new people too.
Yeah. It's and this year is going to be different. It's kind of, again, we kind of, these relationships that we build with the National Park Service have been awesome. This is new this year. I have I think there's 22 pages of permit this year.
Oh wow.
And it's a little different. They're definitely they're protecting our natural resources. They're protecting the park, and so they've made some changes to places that we've been in the past. But they are also very forgiving for us because they know that we respect the environment and that we take good care of the park. So our backcountry camping and that's part of our permit. There's a lot of roads that are still closed from flooding, but they've left our permit to be kind of flexible enough that, you may change some of your routes and you're okay to do that. Whereas that they don't do that for everybody, and we can kind of plan accordingly. And if a road happens to open up, we can change things and take advantage of these new openings. So. That was this year I thought I was kind of done with it in December. We had submitted everything and paid our fees, and I got a couple more emails after that going, what about this? What about I didn't, it's different this year. These are new aspects to what we're trying to do. So, but again, pretty awesome folks out there. So if you want to go to Death Valley, I think that second trip, I'm going to throw it out there. I have not confirmed it yet, but that second trip, we're probably going to take you up and see our friend Brent up at Cerro Gordo. So, if you've ever seen any of his videos, Ghost Town Living.
That's on the second trip? That's the second trip?
Second trip.
Darn it. I'm currently planning on doing the first trip, although it could change because I was going to go down and do TDS because the guys who have to TDS, which by the way, listeners, we're trying to get Bo Nice from Tierra del Sol to be on the show. I think we're going to try to do it on the 21st if he's available. So that week, which would be the 23rd, it would go live just to talk about Tierra del Sol because it's one of the oldest events around. But I was going to go to TDS, but then I realized that I don't really want to go down there and do another 7.5 hour drive just to go from TDS up to where you're at.
Right.
And I would have to bring Josh along on that. So I don't know, maybe I'll do the second. So I haven't done Cerro Gordo. I mean, I have not done that yet. I really would like to. So
well, and Brent, if our listeners don't know who Brent Underwood is, Ghost Town Living, I believe, is his YouTube channel, and what a remarkable guy, what a remarkable place. I mean, the fact that he's basically rebuilding Cerro Gordo. He's lived up there now for a couple years by himself, which is just crazy to me. But
his latest video I saw, he's going out there. He's like, he found some other place that it could be, another ghost town that he went walking towards, on his hikes, because he goes in these long hikes, guys.
Yeah.
These long hikes just to go out and discover stuff, right? And guess what? He can leave his door unlocked because nobody comes up there. It's probably pretty calm living, right?
Right. I saw recently where he had a bunch of snow and wind though, and he was, like one of the doors had blown open and like filled the inside of one of the buildings with snow.
Oh wow.
And he was, you could feel his struggle for sure. And he's a long way from anything. You can't really, he had a room full of little 20-gallon propane tanks because the truck can't get up the hill to fill his.
So when is he going to get the big drone that he goes down, and then the shop down below knows that his drone had arrived, put that on there and let him, his groceries on there, and lets it comes back. I mean, either that or his own little helicopter. I mean, he's got time to learn how to fly. Just needs a little helicopter, he can go fly into town. In fact, what are those? What are they called? The ones that the gyrocopters.
Yeah, there you go.
Right, where they just have the back prop going, and then this just is the top prop doesn't actually have an engine to it. It just flows from the pressure created by the back prop. A little gyrocopter. I'm not sure how that would be in the middle of winter, but I would do it. I mean, I think if I was out there, I'd learn how to fly something like that.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Well, guys, another great episode. This is sometimes I love just doing these random shows. It's actually more fun doing random shows when we've got guests coming through. And ladies and gentlemen, we have guests lined up in the next 2 weeks, actually trying the next 3 weeks. We're really, really focusing on getting a lot of great guests in. As you might see a theme going on, a lot about land use, because that's really the battle of our time. Right? There's a lot of battles that we are all concerned about, whether it's Second Amendment or First Amendment, et cetera, et cetera. But land use, right? I mean, our entire existence exists because there are places for us to go wheel. And if we lose the right to go wheel, and trust me, once they tackle and win on the public lands that we use, then they will put all that energy and force against the private lands. They will come out, and the battles that happen back east on private land is still happening. It doesn't matter that it's private ownership. No. Your private property does not supersede our responsibility to Mother Nature, right? That's the environmentalist point of view, because really they just hate this. And I'm going to start using a different term, because I've used the term environmentalist. And talking with our friend Shannon Welch, who will be on the show in a couple of weeks, she doesn't use the term environmentalist because she believes she is an environmentalist. Any of us, I think we are all environmentalists. We care about the environment. That's what environmentalist is. But there are eco-terrorists. And that's a term she uses to describe people. And she'll talk about that. The eco-terrorists out there, which they're not trying to preserve the environment. They're trying to make the environment more important than you and I. The environment more important than humanity itself. And there's that, to me, that's a different line that we need to, that can't be crossed. So I love getting some of these people on board. This kind of seems to be the theme right now. Talk about an environment, talk about what we're doing, responsibilities for that. And if there's anybody out there in the audience that does a lot of work in your region, let us know, because we don't know everybody. And I'd happy to, if you're somebody who's doing a lot of great work in your area, just have them reach out to us, or reach out and let us know, and we'll reach out and get them on the show. And as always, you can send us questions. Matt said at MetalCloak.com. You can send questions for a show, and just preempt it with, hey, I'd like you guys to address this. And we'd love to. Okay. That being said, you can reach me at Matt@MetalCloak.com, Corey at MetalCloak.com, ModernJeeper Adventures, where, yes, I said I'd do it last week and it's not done, but I just have it up on my screen right now, and we will get the registration live for Memorial Weekend for Moab. And we'll get that done, get that live. And of course, check out our YouTube channel with all our other shows that we've done. And Corey is working with people now to get more YouTube content up, because as he said, he has tons and tons and tons of content. He just needs to get it up there.
That's right.
Speaking of which, you did take a bunch of, you had a special tour of Scotty's Castle. Yes. Are you going to do an article on that?
Yes. Yep.
Oh, good. I want to see that. I want to see when that comes out.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So even the people I deal with in the permit office, guys, this is Yep, we're trying to sign off and let you guys get back to your regular scheduled thing. But the folks in the permit office, the gal that I deal with had never been to Scotty's Castle.
Wow.
So again, it's been closed for 7 years, and
Wow.
as things change in the park service and different roles and whatnot, so they just got a tour of Scotty's Castle last Sunday. Kind of a special thing. Like people in their office had. It's kind of funny, over the years, thanks to Dell and thanks to all of our trips, I kind of have this mental map of the entire park. And when I put together a permit, I know where I'm going and where I want to go. Well, a lot of people that even work inside the park service are like, yeah, we've never been there. We don't, where is that? Oh, yeah, well, you must know where you're going. So again, it's a pretty special thing for them to have let us go into Scotty's Castle. Hopefully in another year, it'll be open to the public. And there'll be a couple of stories we'll probably produce on ModernJeeper.com from some pictures and images. We only got to see a very small portion of it, but it's crazy that something like that exists out there in the middle of nowhere. So yeah,
absolutely. All right. Well, listeners, thank you so much for being a part of the show. Check us out, ModernJeeperAdventures.com, ModernJeeperForum.com, and ModernJeeper.com for your latest and greatest news and information about the worlds of Jeep, Jeeping and Jeepers, and sometimes Broncos and other rigs too. And by the way, turf battles or conflict going into killer Jeeping. There's some great articles up there. Settlement reached over steering dampener. That's one you were just talking about. Our turf battles and conflict going to kill our Jeeping. Where the future going, CES 2023. Come on. There's an article in there about CES 2023 that Corey and Jessy went out, and some of the amazing, crazy stuff there. So
yeah, crazy stuff. And there's a new subscribe button on ModernJeeper.com. So if you get down to the bottom of the page, and I'll probably move that box later after I, put on my coding hat, which I really suck at. If you want to get notified when we send out an article or when we put an article up, that little subscribe box on there, all we're looking for is your email address, and you just get a little notification when we send out an article. That's it.
Awesome. That's awesome. That's great. I just subscribed because I don't think I was subscribed.
Nice.
That's awesome. Very cool, guys. All right. For all of you out there, for all of us, thank you. And we'll see you on the trails.
Cheers.